Hello students, welcome to my channel again. Today we are going to start a new chapter that is called optical fibers, and this is the first lecture of this chapter, optical fibers. In this chapter I will describe the basic physical concepts related with the working of the optical fibers, and today's topic is principle and construction of optical fiber. Okay, let me draw the basic construction diagram of optical fiber. Okay, first of all, we will discuss the definition of the optical fiber. So its definition is it is a it is a thin, flexible, hair-like, cylindrical fiber cylindrical shaped fiber having three coaxial layers, and it is used it can transfer optical signal from one end to other. So this is the definition of the optical fiber. So it is a thin, flexible, hair-like fiber containing three layers. Okay, the construction of the optical fiber I have shown in this figure. You can see this is the innermost layer of the optical fiber, which is called core. So the name of the innermost layer is core, and the diameter of this optical fiber, it is of the order of 10 to 60 micrometer. So this core has refractive index n1 and it is transparent. It is a transparent layer. So this is surrounded by another layer. This layer has approximately 125 micrometer thickness on each side of the core. This layer is called clad. It is also transparent, and the refractive index of this layer, I will use the symbol N2 for refractive index of this layer, which is called clad. So the outermost layer of the optical fiber is called buffer jacket. It is also called as sheath. So its thickness is of the order of a millimeter. It is not transparent, it is opaque. So this layer is the outermost layer, and kindly remember, since the only the inner two layers are transparent, so optical propagation takes place only due to these two layers, that is core and clad. So this is the construction of the optical fiber. So kindly remember the refractive index of clad, although both are transparent, the refractive index of clad, which is n2, it is slightly lesser than that of n1. Why it is slightly lesser than that of n1? Why we do not take the difference between the refractive index of n1 and n2 to be large? I will tell you about this in my next lectures. So kindly wait till my next lecture. So there I will tell you, okay, why will we keep n1 minus n2 to be very close to 0. So this is the construction of optical fiber. So let me now go to the next slide, and where I will tell you what is the difference between the three layers and what are their important properties. Let us now go to the next slide. Okay, these are the differences between the core and clad that I have written on this slide. So you can see core is the innermost layer that was visible in the diagram that I have shown in my previous slide. So on the other hand, clad is the layer which is surrounding the core. Sorry, here it is written wrong. So it is the layer surrounding the core. So clad is the layer surrounding the core. So the diameter of core, it is of the order of 10 to 60 micrometer. On the other hand, the thickness of clad around the core, it is of the order of 125 micrometer. Now this is third point is actually not a difference, it is actually a resemblance. Both core as well as clad, these are made from plastic and both are transparent. Core is also transparent and clad is also transparent. So it means only core and clad, these two layers combinedly, they are responsible for optical propagation. So optical propagation actually is due to these two layers. Now, although the fourth point shows that the optical propagation through takes place through this layer, but this is true, of course, but this cannot happen without total internal reflection, which is the principle of optical fiber. I will tell you about total internal reflection in the next slide. So the signal that we send or the light that we send through optical fiber, it propagates from one end to the other end through the core only. Then what is the role of the clad? The clad provides necessary rarer medium around the core. Here it is again wrong. The clad provides necessary rarer medium around the core for total internal reflection to take place. So without clad, it is will not be possible for optical communication to take place through the core. Next, the refractive index of core is N1 and it is slightly more than that of N2. This is actually the same sentence written here, but it is written that refractive index of clad is slightly smaller than that of core. Let us now discuss in the next slide what is the role of the third layer, which is the sheath. Okay, sheath is actually the outermost layer. It is the outermost layer. It is made from rubber or plastic. It is opaque. Rather, we use color coding for of sheath for joining two different optical cables. Kindly remember there is a difference between fiber and a cable. In case of optical cable, you can have many optical fibers. Many optical fibers. So when we join two different optical cables, then fibers of same color are joined with each other. Then the thickness of the sheath, it is of the order of 0.5 to 1 mm. So what is its importance? First of all, kindly remember it has no role in optical communication since it is opaque. So kindly remember the refractive index of opaque body, it is undefined. You cannot talk about the refractive index of opaque bodies. So refractive index is undefined for the uh, wavelength for which it is opaque, for the concerned wavelength, for the concerned wavelength. then what is its role? Its role is simply to protect. It gives extra protection to the fiber. It gives some flexibility and strength to the fiber, and saves the fiber from external, or what you say as ambient changes, ambient changes in physical conditions like temperature and pressure. So this sheath has no role to play in the optical propagation of light through the optical fiber. Therefore, since it has no role to play in the fiber, therefore we therefore therefore sheath is usually not shown in the diagrams. So I will also use this feature. So kindly remember, sheath is always there, but normally in the books or in articles, sheath is not shown due to the reason that sheath has no role to play in the optical communication. It is only used for color coding, for giving the flexibility and strength to the optical fiber. Let us now discuss what is the principle and working of the optical fiber. Okay, let us now discuss the principle of optical fiber. So the principle of optical fiber is actually total internal reflection. I will abbreviate this total internal reflection as TIR. So I have given the demonstration of total internal reflection in this diagram. You can see here it is a water tank. So its refractive index is N1, and outside the water there is a air surface, and its refractive index is N2. Since we know that water is denser as compared to air, so you can very easily designate water to be denser medium and air to be rarer medium, so that N2 is slightly lesser. N2 is actually less than N1. Now suppose there is an object placed at the bottom of the water tank. So you can assume this object to be any metal coin. So this metal coin or this object will emit light rays in all directions, like this or this or this or this. So it is emitting light rays in all directions. So I will be discussing the behavior of certain light rays. So first light ray is this one, which is going in such a way that when it will strike at some point A on the surface between water and air, this surface which is separating two different media, it is called interface. So since this surface is separating water and air, so it is the interface. So this ray of light which is traveling from the object in such a way that it strikes at a point A on the interface normally. So you can see this is the symbol for normal. So it is striking normally. Such a ray is said to be, such a kind of incidence is called normal incidence. This is normal incidence. So in this case, for this ray, the angle of incidence is 0 degree. So the angle of incidence is 0 degree. So this ray will not obey Snell's law, or you can say for normal incidence Snell's law fails. So this ray will travel from water into air, but it will not be changing its path. So this ray for which the Snell's law is not applicable, then this ray will go undeviated. So for it, angle of incidence is 0 degree, angle of refraction will also be 0 degree. Let us now consider another ray which is traveling toward the water-air interface in such a way that it strikes at some point B on the interface, where the angle of incidence of this ray is phi 1. This phi 1, you can see phi 1 is not 0 degree, so it is making some non-zero angle with the normal. So on coming out of this water, this ray will travel away from the away from the normal. Since it is traveling from denser to rarer medium, it will bend away from the normal, and if it is bending away from the normal, you can see this is the normal. So away from the normal is actually toward the surface. So this ray, therefore, after coming out from the water air interface, it will be closer to the surface of the water. Next, you can see if I apply Snell's law, which is given here, it is the refractive index of the first medium multiplied by sine of the angle of incidence, and it is always equal to product of refractive index of second medium multiplied with the sine of angle of refraction. You can write Snell's law by if you do cross multiplication, you can very easily write it like this: sine r1 upon sine phi 1 equals to n1 upon n2. Now if n1 and n2 both are constant, then the right hand side of this equation is constant. So if I write constant here, so kindly remember I use the abbreviation CONS double T for constant. So if I use a constant here, you can see sine r1 upon sine phi 1 will be constant. So you can see sine r1 will be proportional to sine phi 1. The meaning of this is if I increase phi, that is angle of incidence, then the value of r will always increase. So this conclusion I can draw from the fact that the angle of incidence, angle of refraction, and angle of reflection, these three angles are always less than or equal to 90 degree. So it means sine phi 1 and sine r1, they lie in the first quadrant of the trigonometric table. So therefore sine is an increasing function in the first quadrant. It means if angle will increase, the value of sine will also increase. Conversely, if angle will decrease, the value of sine will also decrease. So therefore, from this relation that sine r1 is proportional to sine phi 1, I can very easily make a conclusion that with increase in phi, this double arrow which is upward, actually it means that it is increase. So with increase in phi, there will always be increase in r. Now we will remember this fact in our mind. Now consider this ray which is traveling in the denser medium in such a way that it will strike at the interface on point C, and the point C is farther as compared to point B. So since it is farther as compared to point B, therefore the angle of incidence that it makes with C, that is phi 2, it is greater than phi 1. So it means phi has increased. So if I remember this conclusion, with increase in phi, r will also increase. It means when this ray will come out of water, then this ray will bend more toward the surface. That is, r2 has to be greater than r1, because phi 2 is greater than phi 1, therefore r2 will be greater than r1. So it means this ray, the second ray, will be more close to the water surface as compared to the first ray. So we make a therefore conclusion, as we go away from the point of normal incidence, as we move away from the point of normal incidence, the refracted ray will be more and more closer to the interface between water and air. So therefore a point must be available. We must reach at a point, such a point I have designated in this figure by D, where the ray of light will travel exactly parallel to the interface between water and air after refraction. Such a point where the refraction will produce a ray traveling parallel to the interface is called point of critical incidence. The angle of incidence for which the refracted ray moves along the interface is called critical angle. So phi c is actually my critical angle, and whenever angle of incidence is critical angle, always the angle of refraction will be 90 degree, and the refracted ray will always travel parallel to the surface which is common between the denser and the rarer medium. Now, since the object is emitting light rays in all directions, now if I consider another ray which is traveling farther from the in the denser medium, such that it strikes at the interface with at point P, which is still farther from point D. Point D is the point of critical incidence. So then the angle of incidence, which is phi, it will be more than that of critical angle, you can see. So in such a way, the ray of light, it has to bend further. So when it will bend further, it will be traveling after striking the point E, it will be traveling back in the denser medium. It will not go in the rarer medium. Such a phenomena is called total internal reflection, and at point E you will use law of reflection instead of law of reflection, since it is a reflection. So according to law of reflection, the angle of incidence and angle of reflection are always the same. So therefore we can see there are two conditions for total internal reflection to take place. Let us write these two conditions in the next slide. Okay, so I have now written the conditions for total internal reflection in this slide. You can very easily see that the first condition is that the ray of light must be traveling from denser to the rarer medium. This we have seen in the previous slide, that all the rays which I discussed were traveling from water into air, and water is denser medium as compared to air. The second condition for total internal reflection is that angle of incidence in the denser medium must be greater than that of critical angle. We have seen in the previous slide that only those rays which were striking farther from point D, which was the point of critical incidence, were suffering total internal reflection. So this is the second condition for total internal reflection. So now we are interested in finding the expression for critical angle. So for that I have shown in this diagram the ray which is incident on the interface between denser and rarer medium exactly at the critical angle. We have already seen that in the previous slide that the angle of refraction will be 90 degree in such a case. Whenever the angle of incidence within the denser medium is critical angle, then the angle of refraction will be 90 degree. So to find the expression for critical angle, we will apply Snell's law at point D. So you can see the first medium. So here it is a mistake. So this refractive index is actually N1 and this refractive index is actually N2. So the first medium in which was water in my slide, its refractive index was N1 and it was a denser medium. So I would write here N1 multiplied by sine of phi c, and the second medium into which the ray is traveling after suffering refraction is N2. In my previous slide I took it to be air, so right now I am writing it to be rarer medium. So the refractive index is N2 and the angle of that the ray of light makes with the normal after suffering refraction is actually 90 degree. We all know that sine 90 is 1, so this will simply become equal to n2. So therefore sine phi c is equal to n2 upon n1. So this is the expression for critical angle. So kindly remember, you always know it that sine is always less than 1. In this expression, the numerator must be lesser than the denominator. So denominator must be more. So this will be the refractive index of always rarer medium, and this will always be the refractive index of denser medium. So this expression I will use, when I will be giving my next lecture related with the acceptance angle and numerical aperture of the optical fiber. Kindly remember this expression. Next, let us now discuss how light travels from one end of optical fiber to the other end, and how what conclusions can we draw from this. Okay students, in this slide I have shown the diagram of optical fiber again. You can see here, this is the innermost layer which is core, this is the next layer which is clad. Kindly remember there is sheath outside, but I have not shown here because of the fact that I have given in my earlier part of this lecture that sheath has no role to play in the propagation of light through it. So I will not show sheath, but please remember it is there. So this is dotted line is the axis of the fiber. So I have shown here three different rays of light. The ray number 1, it is traveling parallel to the axis. Then ray number 2, it is making some angle theta 1 with the axis of the fiber. And ray number 3, it is making angle theta 2 with the axis of the optical fiber, where theta 2 is greater than theta 1. And for this ray, the angle with the axis, let us say this angle is theta, it is 0 degree. So this ray is also called axial ray. So this ray will enter in the fiber, and on entering in the fiber, it will not obey Snell's law. So it will travel in the fiber without bending. So if there is no bend in the optical fiber, so this ray will continue to travel along its original path, and it will come out of the fiber through this point, and this ray will reach the output here. Now consider ray 2, which is making some angle theta 1 with the axis. So since it is traveling from the outside medium, because most of the times this outside medium will be air. Kindly remember, in the previous example I took the example of air and water. Kindly remember, here we have air outside but there is no water. This medium is glass having refractive index n1. This medium is also glass, and the outside medium is air. So when this ray 2 will enter at this point in the optical fiber, since it is traveling from air into glass, so the refractive index of air is smaller than that the refractive index of glass, so it will bend toward the normal. Please remember, for this point, normal is actually the axis of the fiber. So on entering this medium, that is core, this ray will bend toward the axis. So this angle, which is the angle of refraction, that is, I can use it as R1, it will be smaller than this angle, that is theta 1, because the ray of light has to bend toward the axis or toward the normal. So when it enters in the core, it travels after bending, it travels along straight line, and it strikes at this point. This point is common between core and clad, so therefore it is an interface point. Suppose this point is B and this point is A. So for the time being, kindly assume that when it will strike at point B, then this angle is greater than critical angle. So we know that there are two conditions for total internal reflection to take place. First, ray of light must be traveling from denser to rarer medium. This is okay. You see this ray at point B, it is coming within the core. So core has refractive index N1 and the outer medium of B is clad. Its refractive index is N2, and please see that N2 is smaller than N1. So first condition is satisfied, that the ray must be traveling from denser to rarer. So it's okay. Now assume that this angle, which I have shown by this black arc, let us say this angle is phi and this angle is greater than critical angle. So phi is greater than critical angle. So therefore the second condition will be also satisfied. So how we will keep phi greater than critical angle? It is a question which I will answer in my next lecture. For the time being, you assume that phi is greater than critical angle. So if now both conditions are met, so therefore this ray at point B will not go into the clad. It will suffer total internal reflection, and after suffering total internal reflection, it will come back into the core. So when it will come back into the core, it will travel at some point C on the it will travel toward some point C on the optical fiber, and point C is again on the core clad interface, but now it is on the opposite side. This point was let us say in the upper region, this is in the lower region. So if there is no bend in the optical fiber, and this ray, since it has suffered a total internal reflection, so it will obey now law of reflection, and law of reflection says that angle of reflection is always equal to angle of incidence. So if angle of incidence is phi, so therefore angle of reflection will also be phi. So now you see this point, and if I draw a normal here and I assume that there is no bend in the optical fiber, then these two angles will be alternating angles, this angle and this angle. These will be alternating angles. So this and this are equal because of law of reflection, and this will be equal because these are alternating angles, with the assumption that these are there is no bend in the optical fiber. So therefore this angle will also be phi. Now we know that phi is greater than phi c. So if total internal reflection is satisfied at point B, then total internal reflection will also be satisfied at point C, provided there is no bend in the optical fiber. What will happen if there is bend in the optical fiber? So I will answer to this question in my next lecture. Kindly remember to ask this question in the next lecture's comment section if I do not give the answer. Of course, I remember that I will be giving the answer, but still you can wait for that time. So therefore total internal reflection condition will be satisfied at C also. So at C also the ray will not travel into the core, it will again be reflected back. At point C the ray will not travel into the clad, it will again be reflected back into the core, and it will continue to do so. The process will continue till the ray reaches the end point of the optical fiber. So this is here at the time of coming out of the optical fiber. Now since it is coming out from core into air, so therefore it is now traveling from denser into rarer medium, so it will bend away from normal. So since at the input as well as at the output the normal will be the axis, so it will be bending slightly toward the surface of the fiber. So you can see that the ray number 2 has suffered total internal reflections, and it has traveled more path as compared to ray number 1. So as a result of this, both of the rays, if they have equal speed, then the ray which will come out of the fiber first will be the one which has traveled the less distance, and the ray which will come out of the fiber later on will be that ray which has traveled more distance. So in our case, ray number 2 has traveled more distance as compared to ray number 1. So therefore, although the ray number 1 and 2 have entered in the fiber at same time, they will not come out of the fiber at the same time. The ray which will be coming out of the fiber at first will be the ray number 1, because it is the axial ray and it has traveled minimum distance. Next ray that will come will be the ray number 2. You can now just convince yourself that the ray number 3, which is making an angle theta 2 with the axis of the optical fiber, and this angle is much more as compared to theta 1. So when it will enter in the optical fiber, it will suffer more number of reflections. So it will suffer at, let us say, P and Q and R, and this point is, let us say, S. So it will suffer more number of reflections, and the distance traveled by it within the optical fiber will be more as compared to the distance traveled by the ray number 2. So therefore ray number 3 will come in the last. Out of these three rays which I have shown in the diagram, ray number 3 will be the ray which will come out of the fiber at last. So this is a actually limitation of optical fiber, and this is called transit time dispersion. It is also called intermodal dispersion delay. So you in this slide you have learnt that the optical fiber works on the principle of total internal reflection. Each ray enters from one face of the optical fiber into the core, then it continues to suffer multiple total internal reflections again and again, and eventually it comes out of the other end of the optical fiber. So this is the principle of working of optical fiber. Then what you must remember, that all rays which enter in the optical fiber at same instant of time, it is not necessary that these rays will come out of the fiber at same instant of time. The rays which travel smaller distance or which are closer to the principal axis of the optical fiber will come out of the optical fiber earlier than the rays which are called marginal rays, which are traveling away from the axis of the fiber. So these rays will come out with these rays will take large time to come out of the fiber, and this will produce a limitation, a drawback of optical fiber, and that drawback is called transit time dispersion, or it is also called intermodal dispersion delay. So if somebody asks you what is the definition of transit time dispersion, you can give the answer that it is the process in which rays entering in the optical fiber at different angles take different time to travel a given length of the optical fiber. So I think this is sufficient for today. So now I will stop here. In the next lecture we will discuss about acceptance angle at a numerical aperture of optical fibers. Till then, thank you. Thanks a lot.